Call the meeting to order. Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Architectural Board of Review, February 4th, 2025. Mike, call the roll, please.
Okay. Member Cottrell?
Present.
Member Dahlman?
Here.
Member Kerouac?
Here.
Member Stradiff?
Here.
Member Wicks?
Here.
And Chair Hunter?
Here.
And Member Deegan is absent, but we have a quorum.
Okay, next is the consideration of January 9th minutes. They were pretty short. It was a short meeting. Anything, have any?
I move they be approved as submitted.
I second.
Did we do, no. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any non-agenda items? Anybody here for a non-agenda item tonight, either in the audience or at home?
And I see there are two people on the Zoom. Just press the button to raise your hand if you want to speak on the Zoom. No one is indicating that they want to speak.
Okay. So then the next next item is the design review for replacement of exterior lights at the Lake Bluff Library. Mike, you said you have some.
Yeah, I can give a brief introduction. A couple years back, our previous library director had a handyman replace some lights. Some of them on the south side were not working at all for years beforehand, I think. And the new lights they put in shined quite a bit of light out towards the neighbors. And now our new interim director, David Sullivan, has adopted some lights that were suggested by Brian Renner that'll put the light down on the ground and not shine it out to the neighbors. And that's the plan and everything in your packet. David, if you want to come up to the podium and let us know if you have anything you want to add to what I said there.
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We ran into each other on the sidewalk.
Pardon me, sir?
Said we ran into each other on the sidewalk.
we did.
We did, okay. All right, anybody have any comments on this? Sue?
Nope.
Scott?
No, seems
Matt?
appropriate.
No, looking at the photometrics, looks like it's achieving the goal that they want, so
Yeah.
looks great.
Neil?
No, I just remember when they were first installed, the ones that are being removed, we were considering other problems with exterior lights at the same time. And I remember walking by the library and saying, how did they ever get approval to do that? Well, I'm glad that they're being removed
Yeah.
because you mentioned that they shine into the south windows. They also shine directly east into the windows on the house that's right there.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
this is a good solution to change these.
I agree
with
everybody else.
Okay, so somebody needs then to make a motion?
I move we approve these lights as submitted.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. No more discussion? Roll call vote.
Okay. Member Cottrell.
Aye.
Member Dahlman.
Aye.
Member Kerouac.
Aye.
Member Stradiff.
Aye.
Member Wicks.
Aye.
And Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The lights are approved. Thanks for coming, David.
Thank you. You said the next step is a permit process?
Yeah, that's right.
Communicate about that?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Do you want to tackle this first or later?
I just want to mention that we have an item and that we forward it to the members.
Okay.
Do you want to call the item and open it first?
You mean the one that we're going to look at now?
Yeah.
Okay, the next on the agenda is the design review of proposed multifamily building at 120 East Scranton. Pete, it's your show.
All right.
And I just want to mention that we received comments by email from Susan Reese, and I forwarded it to the ABR members, and there's a paper copy printed out at your place if you want to look at what those were.
All right. I'm gonna pull up our presentation there to get started. Do you have the PowerPoint or no?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Starting to make me concerned because I'd have to do it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay.
All right, perfect. Thanks again for allowing us to present the project. We've got the comments back from our last meeting when we were together in the workshop, and I thought there was a lot of constructive things, and we really reviewed a lot of those ideas and incorporated most of them into the plans. We also went back in front of the Plan Commission and spent a fair amount of time on the site, in terms of logistics of the car ramp, the pedestrian. This is the old plan, how the sidewalk works, looked at numerous different options in terms of how that might change and increase the safety of it. And the last thing that we have done is we've sent all the information to Tesca, and they're reviewing the knuckle at the corner. And so that may get modified slightly in terms of how that is accomplished, because it doesn't line up with the other knuckle on the west side. You can see those two don't align. So this is what we have at the moment. We're going to wait to get back the recommendations from Tesca and see what they have and probably incorporate those into the design. The landscape plan has been refined in terms of the corners and some of the sight lines in terms of coming out of the ramp, making sure there isn't any barriers to sight that way, and how pedestrians cross at the crossing out toward the road for that. And then basically landscaping the corners and the privacy of the outdoor spaces from the individual units, and incorporating those areas on the four corners. We're going to try to keep the parkway trees that are there. They're in actually great locations and in pretty good shape. All the other trees are really not in great shape. There aren't many of them. And if they do get damaged during construction, then we will replace them with additional trees. You can go to the next slide. This is just a landscape plan which calls out all the species of all the plants around the project. The next slide. We have the option to have some at-grade generators, and two of the units are going to be at grade, and they're on either side of the ramp. And those, you can see on the right there how the plan is and where their location would be, and they'd be screened with landscape. They would be for two of the units in the lower level. In the top floor, the generators would be hidden by the parapet on the roof. But we wanted to have that option just so we had locations for those. So that's what this shows. The next slide. The floor plan really hasn't changed much. This is the basement spaces, and then the first floor units, which there are four of them there, with the corner porches. You can go to the next slide. And then the upper units, 4 units, and then with the upper penthouses to access the outside space on the roof, on the four different units on the second floor. Again, this is just the same slide that we had. Really, our detailing is really looked at buildings in Lake Bluff and other buildings of the same vintage for its detailing. And then what we did here was show what we had and then showed where we are. So up the 3 images or 4 images above are what we originally presented, and then what we presented or what we're proposing is down below. So you can see the cornice has a soldier course and then another row lock underneath it, and relieved at the top edge of the building gives a little more detail to that. We talked about the piers being pulled out. You can see the heads of the windows have been enlarged to 1.5 bricks high to give them a better scale. The porches, and we can talk about this a little bit. We had some discussion about the screening in of the porches, and what it's really came to light is that it's a really important element to people who are buying these units, the screened-in piece of it, as it has been historically in Lake Bluff. So we'd like to keep the screened-in porches. We've added the details of the bracketing at the corners of the posts, which would stay on the outside and the screens would go on the inside. We looked at different options in terms of retractability. And really one is they're very large, and two is getting them tight, and then people up and down. And so we really feel like what we'd like to do is have a copper screen and then it be divided. I'll show you another picture. We can go to the next level. Oh, one of the things that we keep showing the American flags in the front of the building. And our thought is that would be for 4th of July, Memorial Day, those sorts of things. So they wouldn't be a permanent kind of situation, but just a place to put them, So I think that's appropriate, because if we do have them permanent, then they need to be lighted. And that creates a whole bunch of issues with lighting up interior space that we really didn't thought that made much sense. This slide shows, just go back one, the window detailing, so the enlarging of the brick details in some of the windows, and then the center bays really having the limestone go around on all sides of the window. You can see on the left slide. And then below the window, we have a herringbone pattern that lines up below. You can see those in the two different examples there. And then the porch, you can see the coach lights, and we have those in the lighting. You show you the samples of the coach lights that we have on the exterior porches. I'll show you this in the lighting plan. This is just one to show the examples of around town that we were really looking at and drawing from. Again, just the entrance sequence and the idea of the detailing of that. Next one. So this is our entrance. The one on the left is the previous, and the one on the right is our refined. And it's a little different because the one on the right is actually a perspective. It's not an elevation, so it's true what it will look like when you walk up to the building. So you can see the center bay. We've sort of pulled away and put limestone around, or cast stone around all the openings to make it stand out and be different than the other two bays on either side. We've actually moved the address up to the top, and as opposed to being above the circular entrance element, because you have trouble seeing that when you're down on the street because it gets blocked off by that. So we thought it made more sense to have it up at the top. And then there you can see the cornice detailing and all the pieces there. The next slide. So this is the corner that really shows. So what we'd like to do is give people who are buying their first floor units an option of screening in their space or not, because people have sort of a strong feeling one way or the other. So the one on the right would be how it would look screened in. So we would have a metal frame. You'd still see the brackets at the corner, and it would be subdivided into reasonable size screens so that they wouldn't sag on that. You can see the coach lights up on the top space, and then they're also at the doors in the first floor level too. Again, we did these in perspective because we just felt like it was a little better rendition of making it really photorealistic of what it's going to look like. So I thought it did a pretty good job of doing that. And next one. So then elevations, the front elevation. This is just the entire elevation, so you can see it is all one piece. You can see how the center portion is now pumped, or has the limestone detail, or the cast stone detailings around the windows, and then the edges. You can see the panels of brick underneath the two sides with a herringbone in it, had the details around that way, and then the cornice heads and then heads. It's hard to pick. I showed the details first, so then you can see these elevations, because you really lose it at this scale. I mean, it's hard to see, but I think you get that appreciation. I think it was brought up before that, when you're on that sidewalk, you are close enough to see those details, so you really will pick those up, which would be important.
Drew, could you check with Tim in the back? I'm getting a message from our Zoom people that the audio is off it has. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, sorry to
Should I start over?
No, I think you're good.
Okay, that's all right. Happy to. So we can get to the next one. That's the south elevation.
Okay. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. I guess I'm not. There we go.
All right, so this is the west elevation, which I thought the comment of trying to arch and basically have cast stone going around the entrance into the lower level really made a big difference in terms of how that looks. So I thought that was a really big improvement for that. Again, in the center bay, we have the stone surrounds around the windows. This just shows how the parking works and the sidewalks and the railings, which come out, which make people walk out and slow down, and bikes slow down going across that. We did study the ramp quite a bit with ourselves and looking at it. We've done this in 5 other buildings that we've done in Lake Forest in a similar kind of situation. And then we also, I had a whole photo montage of it's relatively common in Highland Park. There's a fair amount of underground garages and residential that's similar. This would be the first one in Lake Bluff, but it's the first sort of building like this in Lake Bluff. So it's pretty common. The slopes are pretty similar to what we have in Lake Forest. So we're pretty familiar with how that would be. And next slide. Then the east elevation, again, just adding the detailing at the top edge and also at the below the windows in the center bay. And next, in the north elevation, is the same pretty much all the way around. The only thing that on the north elevation I don't think is correct in the below, we're going to change the light fixtures that shine on the upper terraces because they're clear. And we have a different light fixture that we're using on the roof, and I'll show you that, which doesn't have any shining. You can't see the bulb, so it's hidden. So it wouldn't project into the neighbors into the east, or the north, sorry. And then also to the east. So the next one. And this is the same as we have. We haven't really changed our section in terms of building heights and how that works. So I just want to show you really the penthouses are from the street really pretty inconceivable or invisible from the street as a view being cut off. And that shows how the ramp works, how we get through that. Next slide. And then this is our lighting foot candle calculation, which we show 0 at all the edges. But I think the next one was kind of interesting. We ran in a Revit model, which really shows how it lights up. So you can see there how the corners light up with those lights, and then how the front entrance in the top corner is lit at the front, and then how the lighting in the ramp is done too. So I thought that actually turned out pretty effective and much better in terms of sort of visually seeing how it is in the, viewing a foot candle map. The next one. This is, I think it's a little hard to read, but this is the black and white version of that, which just shows the white light. The same thing. And then we went around and showed where these lanterns are. So these would be the lanterns on the south elevation, which would be more open, more historic looking, which would face the street and the library, which you felt was a little bit more appropriate for that. You can see those where they are on the right. And the next one. So this is a very direct, we're not only concerned about spill, but those going down to the ramp, but also the 2 windows above will most likely be bedrooms in the units themselves. So we're really concerned about the light spread there, and that shows how that shines down basically at the ramp itself. So that's a more generic looking type fixture. Then we have some recessed cans just to light up the entrance and over the porches a little bit, again, just to give a little bit more light for safety and just negotiating the front door and inside the porches. I think that's it. So these are just some additional perspectives from the corner for that. I think that might be one more. And it's just, this is actually a little bit earlier rendering. We didn't really have the landscape, but I thought it was good just to kind of give a visual on that. And then the last slide we have is a material. So the first one is what do they call it? Midnight soot and is hardy board, smooth-sided. They will be on the penthouses. I wasn't able to get a sample. They couldn't get me that in time. It's supposed to be here tomorrow, unfortunately. But I think everybody knows what hardy board looks like, and it's basically a dark piece. The other
I missed that. There's one on this side.
That's for the penthouses.
the window clap, we talked about having a, trying to get a not black window. And we were able to find what we liked for that, which is just it's called a midnight bronze, which is this, which is just a little off black. But I think it gives a little depth, which is a little different. You know what, this is not probably a great place to see color, but you can pass that around. And then I have two other samples, which is our face brick, which we have a hand molded looking brick, red, and then our cast stone, which would be like stone details around the building, which is really the limestone color for that. So those are the two. Can you see that? You want me to bring it up closer, or?
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe
it's good.
farther.
I mean, it's pretty,
Yeah.
you know, it falls within a historic type character. I mean, we're really trying to use a, historic red. I do like the brick. It's got a little bit of range to it. It does have hand molding look to it. It isn't like a machine, real straight brick. So I think that would be appropriate for this building. I think that's it for my presentation. Happy to answer any questions, or?
Oh, you think?
Absolutely.
Let's start with you.
Okay. A couple of, I think what you're showing us now looks better than what you showed us previously in terms of the detailing and so forth. Basically, I have three concerns. I still feel that this is kind of out of character to what, if the idea is to be a transition from downtown to the residential properties, this falls short. But having said that, the driveway down, is really quite large. I mean, it's two-way traffic plus the man door. Could it not be just vehicles and not pedestrian? In other words, move the emergency exit somewhere else, or that would make it 4 foot less in width?
The issue is where would it go?
Well,
So if you look at it, then you'd have an area well, and it really needs to be on that end, so it would take up a fair amount of landscape on that space.
well, effectively, you could just move it slightly to the south. In other words, you're going to have a wall on the garage, and you could have just enough soil for a planting bed, and then the stairwell. I mean, that would be one thought immediately comes to my mind.
It's a pretty decent run. So that stair, if you look at it, let's see, let me pull up. Can you pull up the basement plan? Let's just look at that a second.
Sure.
Because it's tight to get it in with, it's the landscape plan. There we go.
Right, but
Oh, it does-
basically, if I could interrupt you.
Sure.
Basically, what I'm saying is, you take the stair you have designed,
Mm-hmm.
move it, say, 36 inches south, so that on each side of the stair, you have a wall, and it's separated from the door. Therefore, that archway and so forth can just go over the driveway and doesn't have to include the
Oh,
space for the man door. I'm just wondering if that would look better.
I'm happy to look at that, and I understand where you're, and I hate to have that hold up the whole thing, but it's a little tricky because the arch has to be in the center of the building. The whole has, the arch because it's such a symmetrical elevation.
I
You know,
understand
so
that,
we'll have
but-
to move that around, and I just have to see that the headroom of where that arch.
Wouldn't the overhead door want to be centered on the parking? It isn't the parking.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm
cement-
saying. All that has to stay centered. So we want to come in both sides equal. Actually, we have a little play with the door location.
Right. At any rate, that would be one thought. Somehow make it smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making an assumption that you feel you gotta have two-way traffic.
You know, we don't.
That
But,
would be another possible
I mean, and it
solution.
is really tight to be two ways, but what we found is, one is it's safer. Most people drive down the center of it and go up and down that way. And when somebody's coming, I live in the building in McKinley, so I drive it every day. And I've driven it for 4 years, so I have a pretty good feeling for what people do. When somebody comes out of the top and the garage door is open, obviously somebody's coming out. You stop and let that person go and the thing. But you can be going by each other at the top edge. So you kind of have to keep it that wide, just to be safe, is what we've found.
Then the other question I had is just the overall height of the building. Now, you had a slide up there that showed, but in our packet and so forth, there's no indication of actually from grade to the
Yeah,
top of the
on
parapet.
On that, yeah, and then that, let me, so, let me just pull that up. So, from grade to the parapet is 30 foot 4 inches. And then to the top of the penthouse is 35.10.
Right. If I understood what you said at the previous meeting, it's just the penthouse that you're seeking a height variation for?
No, the 4 inches is a variation too, because it's 35 feet. So the variations that we got through the Planning Commission Zoning Board of Appeals has also included the 4 inches of the parapet. And you'd say, well, why do you 4 inches? Well, it's a difference of having a 9-foot ceiling in your space underneath all the ductwork and everything, or an 8 ceiling. It was a pretty big difference. And, you know, because we're occupying the
The
roof.
parapet extends above the roof deck, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's our guardrail, so that has to be 3'4" high for a guardrail.
Right, but you could put a guardrail, I'm looking at the roof plan.
Yep.
And you put a guardrail around that paving you've got up there, and that would,
We had some discussions with,
okay, but.
More about
let
that.
Let me finish my
sure,
point.
let me think.
How tall are the buildings on the south side of Scranton? Does anybody know?
On the south side, the library?
No, the buildings that you're showing, you know, this is where we're taking our kind of design cues and so forth from. Those buildings, how tall are they?
They're pretty,
I don't know.
I don't know, we didn't measure
You're
them.
talking about the Bluffington building. Because the one across the
Well,
street
or
is the
Lawrence
same-
Interiors, or, you know,
Yeah,
any of
that's the
those.
same building, right,
That, my only thought is that the building gets built and you're standing on the corner and you look at that building and then turn around and look at Bluffington's and say, God, that building is a lot taller than Bluffington's. I'm just wondering whether it would be or not.
I don't think it's probably any taller.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's just my guess.
right.
If you think about the floor, you know, so you go in Bluffington's or whatever, they have at least, what do you think the ceiling height is in there?
Probably 10 feet.
Yeah,
or
that's what I
going
would
on
say.
it.
And we have the same ceiling heights, and we have post-tension, we have structure that's pretty similar to what they have. So we're going to be pretty close in height. I mean, if we were off a foot, that would, you know, and they have front parapets too on some of the buildings too that go up and do things. So I mean, I think they'll be relatively similar.
Okay, I think you've heard everything I have to say.
You're up.
I'm also looking at the site plan that we started with. And a couple of minor details. I'm wondering, the one in each of the three patios, excluding the one on the northeast, has a walkway to get out to the sidewalk, but the one on the northeast does not. And I have a feeling that was just an oversight.
We really, that unit, because they have to go through another space to get to, is going to be more of a traditional condo where you only can get through it through the front door. So that we will not have a walkway into the northeast unit. Just because you're basically going down the sidewalk of the building and sort of past the other one. So we thought it made sense, and we don't have, not everybody who purchased these like that idea that you can come off the sidewalk into their unit. Some people have some security issues about that and would rather not. So yeah, that one does not.
The problem is, once you make it a condominium, that's common space. And if somebody moves in there and decides they want that, they've got to get the condo board to approve it, which they may or may not. So I'm thinking of having the flexibility so that the owner can make decisions.
It is a, I mean, you're exactly right. The one thing that becomes as difficult that is when the person who buys the unit, let's just say in the the northwest corner, and then their space has shortened because the sidewalk goes through it to get back to that unit. So those people have an issue with it. So, we have accommodated, we've tried to be able to modify the interiors of those courtyards for each person's special needs, whatever they see, okay, the patio's too big, oh no, we want it a little different. So we try to sort of customize those outdoor spaces because they're really important to people, and they really have that's one of the really nice things about the project is you have that. So I mean, I guess we could, if we had someone who absolutely wanted to have a sidewalk, we could have the flexibility. I think it makes the most sense for it to come out to the west as opposed to come out to Scranton, out to the south.
Yeah, it might be. So the other question I had on the site plan, and maybe this is in the basement, is where's the trash dumpster?
The trash dumpsters are in the basement in a trash storage. Yeah, it works better than I would have thought. They back the trash truck down the ramp and pull it out and flip it in, and they have recycling. In some of the buildings we have a dumpster, a bigger dumpster. In other ones that are smaller, we just actually have individual trash cans on rollers that come out. Because it's so few units, there's not a ton of it. But the trash is inside for that.
I'm looking at the garage plan. And I'm wondering, are you planning on electric car chargers?
There's two things with that now. So the insurance people limit the electric charges in a condominium building to a trickle charge. You can't have a supercharger. And we do have circuits for 110 outlets for all the electric cars, but we can't put in a supercharger like a 240 charger because of insurance. They don't allow it in any condominium. They had a couple of fires, which
Scared the insurance company.
like everything else. So, but we do have the ability to have trickle 110 chargers. We have another circuit for that.
I guess I know of condo buildings that have chargers in the basement, but I never thought of whether they were the trickle chargers.
Yeah, they can't be. They can't be. If they are, they're not insured, and they're pretty. That was kind of a big deal. It happened about a year ago. There must have been a pretty good fire somewhere.
In the garage, there are, is there any requirement in the code for handicap spaces?
So the spaces that are two together so that any of the spaces can be handicapped, so that you have the ability to do that in any of the spaces.
Well, but the spaces are probably going to be assigned.
Right, and then, but each of the people have adjacent to each other. So you, basically two spaces which can make a handicap space.
They park in the
In the-
middle. And
Yeah.
instead-
The other
okay,
thing, it's kind of, so what we've done in the basement too, you can see how it's like double deep. So you have the option of actually parking a car behind a car if that's what you'd want.
Oh, they are
which
that deep, okay.
Some people, some people, a car they don't use very often or whatever that could do. The other, we build out storage spaces for individuals, based on their storage needs and that too. So they kind of customize the garage spaces, like the units themselves.
Sure, and two spaces, number 9 and number 10. I think somebody will be able to way to get in and out, but they're not going to be easy.
So we have the units 11, 12, 11, and 10 are all one unit. So you get 3 spaces with that.
That'll work.
Yeah, and then the same on the other side, 7, 8, and 9 are all one unit, just because of that, because it's tight.
I'm looking at this drawing, and I like that brick color, which is not quite that.
It's closer than the red.
Yes, it's a lot closer. And, see what else I had. Same thing on the brick color. I think that's pretty well all I had. I'm speaking, most of my comments are geared towards, since we used to have a company that managed condominiums, and so I'm familiar with some of these issues that come.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm looking at some of the details that we've had problems with on buildings.
It's been helpful that we've had now, so we've had, five buildings, 6 buildings that we've done, and one's been operating, I've been living there. So that helps because people aren't really too shy about complaining about, different things that we could do better or whatever. For the most part, it's been pretty good, but, landscaping, how the landscaping between the sidewalk edge and the boxwood or yews or whatever, have enough space in there to put gravel, or not gravel, but granite shavings so that the salt goes there, so we can keep the, all those things that we've, in Regents Row, we planted 4 different ground covers in there and grass and all this other stuff, just because it's too harsh an environment for something to grow. So, like learning about that, all those things really, I think it's been good because we've always learned something. There's always something, having a boiler, central boiler, instead of having individual water heaters so that we don't have, 8 different water heaters that have the possibility of leaking and all that. And so it's more efficient system and it's worked really well. All the different things that we've gone through so far has really sort of paid off for people.
Well, the only other question I've got is on this elevation, there's another street number shown. And I wonder if you really plan on that or if that's just going to confuse everybody.
We debated on that because we thought, first we had the year of the building on one, and then the street number on the other. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. Because the building's going to be 120 Scranton. I mean, that's the building address. So,
Hey, I'm going to interrupt for a minute. I think before you make a decision to have another number on there, you check with the post office. Because the post office will say, they'll decide that that's not your address. Yeah, there was a friend of ours many, many years ago whose house definitely was faced Scranton. It was on the corner, and the post office insisted that his back door was the front of the house. And he fought that thing for 50 years, till he died.
Did he ever win?
Huh?
Did
No.
he win? No.
No.
that's a good point. I mean, we assume because it's pretty obvious what it is,
Yeah.
but you're exactly right. I mean, the numbers that we did in McKinley are all switched from the original numbers. They're all different than what the original properties were. And their rationale was not the post office, it was actually the fire department. They didn't want people being confused, or firemen to be confused of what building used to be there. They wanted to give it a new address so it would be unique. Which you can't really fight, that's a good point though. But we'd have to change, all our LLCs will be all wrong, so.
Other than that, I'm in general pleased with the building and looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Matt?
Hi, I wasn't here for your first presentation, so I apologize if some of these comments either contradict what was said or maybe enhance, I'm not sure. We've waited a long time to get a building put on this lot, and, we've torn down amazing Van Dorn Shaw buildings, and I'm sure you want this building to be special, and I feel like it's just, for me, it's not there. And I don't know if that's a budget thing, if this is what you would want to do, no budget, or I'm just concerned that we're gonna have this big brick building that kind of looks like my parochial school from the 70s. And it's gonna be with us forever in our humble little town. So that's my general statement. And I hate being on this side. I've been where you have and had architects tell me things. I'm like, the client hired me to design, not you. So I get that, but I'm here to speak my piece on this. So I will do that. So the west elevation, I kind of go against maybe what was said before, evidently. Drawing attention to the parking garage entrance seems to go contradictory to what, it's the least successful element of the building, this big hole that you have these windows behind, and we're drawing tons of attention with this huge arch, all of this cast stone. I would take that budget of cast stone and put it on the front fenestration and not over that. Why draw attention to the driveway? And the way that the cast stone engages and overruns the little column brick pilasters, and then the fence dies into it. It feels, I'm sure you took, someone's, but it feels a little forced to make something special that I don't think wants to be special. I think it wants to just go away and let the front of the building, be special. This has more limestone on it, than the rest of the building. And then I have a problem with these corner balconies that are kind of tacked on to this big, massive brick building and what they become over time. If they're screened porches, it's kind of, we're standing, on Scranton and we're looking and, what's going on in those corners, it's kind of facing public. If this was 10 streets of apartment buildings, I think it's great, but it's really facing our downtown, So for me, it's hard to kind of grasp that kind of activity right there. It just feels like it's missing. If they were like, cast stone wrap columns and this cool stone kind of, balustrades and all that, I think that's one thing, like a nice big statement, but they're very kind of, I find them kind of weak statements for such an important corner of the building. I get the carve out to kind of open up, but then you fill it with something I think doesn't have the same level of integrity as the rest of the building. And then I know you're trying to break up the run of windows and kind of that articulation by doing a little bit different brickwork. You have like an arch lintel, then a straight, and then you ended up doing like a picture frame with a herringbone. Again, if we could maybe bring that more instead of just like applying a couple little decorative things to kind of make up for kind of just this long run of brick. And even the way the sills kind of just terminate at the ends of the window instead of articulating a little bit more beyond, just give it some level of, I know it just feels very severe for, if you see all those other details, in these little buildings as we look at them, there's a lot of detail for these little buildings, and you have little detail for a big building. And it's my concern that, in 3 years from now, we may feel that we missed an opportunity to make an amazing statement, for Lake Bluff. instead of one that I feel doesn't quite get there. And if it's a budget issue, I can't fight budgets, and I know you can't fight budgets, and I know that's a main driver. If it's a aesthetical choice, then that's my kind of reply to the aesthetics, and that's subjective, and that's just wanted to state my piece.
Sure. No, and I appreciate all your comments and your thoughts on that. And I think it's a couple of things. One is I think you make a good point about the arch, and we're spending a pretty significant amount of money to make a stone arch over that. So I think this is budget driven.
Yeah,
every building is
sure,
budget driven.
and I appreciate that, right. I know
and
that.
it's, to build a building with 8 units, underground parking, all the things that we need to do.
Yeah.
To me, one of the most important parts of the budget is landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
Putting in mature landscaping in the beginning of the building. I think if you look at our other projects, what's the most dominant factor in all those buildings? It's the landscaping. So that is one thing. And so, I think the idea of having a different detail for the drive, or that, and taking out stone and eliminating that and having a more limestone, if you look at your buildings in downtown Lake Bluff, they're pretty simple buildings. A lot of those elevations, if you look at the pictures that I have, they're pretty simple buildings. I do agree the scale of this building is different. It's larger than, each of those is kind of like the one bay of those, right? So you have this different bay. Historically, we had some big buildings here. We had the home that was, a big brick building, those sorts of things. So, I understand where you're coming from, that this is sort of the one time. I would say, a lot of times there's all the stone balustrades and all that you put on there actually look kind of gaudy. If you want to go to some buildings to see it, in Highland Park, they have all that stone on those things. I think that we don't have the budget to do that, for one. And over time, those things basically fall apart. We're rebuilding those. So, I think to incorporate, so I guess it's twofold. One is there is some, we don't have all the money we can to do this. I think we've spent a fair amount of time in it, and we've looked at a lot of the brick detailing. It is kind of simple and straightforward. It isn't overly done in different ways, and I think they've taken sort of historic type detailing and applied it. Can it get better? Absolutely. Can we look at things? Absolutely. At one point, though, we have to sort of drop our pencils and start building a building.
Right.
And I would say, I wish you were here in the other meeting.
Yeah.
Because we spent
I-
a lot of time and money and energy
I know you
looking
have.
at that. And we're sort of past it at this point from our perspective. We aren't, you guys have to approve it. But we did go in a direction and understanding of individuals. And these are, it's a little bit like going to Friendly and picking out ice cream, right? That there are lots of kinds of ice cream and they're all good. And they're just different flavors. And so, and different textures and different colors and all that. So. But I do appreciate all the comments, because I do think there are pieces that I would pick.
Yeah. And I know this has been, we're excited to have a building here. It's been a long time. So everything about your effort, I'm just, those little subjective things that,
Yeah, no,
and I'm with you on the balustrades, that they do at some point, but these corners just feel a little kind of, New Orleans kind of, finicky, but not quite there.
The one thing I would say is that, and that comment came up, I don't think with this group, but other groups, about what people put on their balcony.
No, that was us. That was me.
Yeah, and so, and I think if you look at the other buildings, because we're in a certain price point, or that people spend a lot of money on these, they want their balconies to look just as well as others. So they typically have, planners that are done by Mariani. Usually Mariani does all their planners, and they have, so they're very, I don't think that, and they also have a condo board, which has a set of guidelines which regulate what can be on that balcony and that too, for that. So, I think that's some controls, and we've seen that in the past, where, it hasn't been really a problem.
That's all I have, Bob. Thank you for your response. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew. I also was not at the last meeting, so I apologize if I'm
late to the party here. But it does feel a little masonry heavy to me. And I'm just wondering if, I think you've done a great job on picking up on a lot of the cues from the downtown area. But I hear a lot of comments that we want to work on this transition from the downtown to the homes that are east of it. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that could be done to just soften the exterior a little bit to help with that transition. And I don't know exactly what the solution is. I don't know if it's colors or.
And that was a big part of the presentation last time.
Okay.
You know, about where this building sits and where it is, and is it, how, should it be more residential oriented or should it be CBD oriented? And the code clearly is written that it needs to be CBD. You know, that it should relate to the CBD. It's in the CBD. And so there is a line basically at the edge of this property that says, okay, that's residential. And the property to the east is really developed with a multifamily, at least what they have today, is more pitched roofs, you know, more on the residential side, which makes sense because it's out of the CBD. This being within the CBD, you know, ought to relate to what the CBD is, and that's the way the code's written, that's the way the design guidelines are written. And that's really what the statement from the Illinois Historic Preservation Group, which you guys reference, really says. So that's the one thing. You know, it's really tough because I think if you start saying, okay, let's put stucco on this, you know, let's put board and batten, it really starts to cheapen up the whole thing, you know. And then then you start to look at other lower income type housing projects which do that, you know, which don't put brick on everything and isn't a solid masonry building like they would have built in the 1920s or 30s or 40s. You know, then I think you have this sort of thing. So you're either one or the other. I mean, I don't know how we can soften it up without adding more details like we did. But the other thing is that, you know, with the landscape too and the trees that we have, I mean, that's going to be a big part of this overall piece. You know, because on our elevations, we actually shaded out, I think, down to 20% the trees. So it's really not like that. You really see more trees than you do building when it is that way. So I don't know. You know, I don't.
In this December 3rd version versus the revised February 4th, did you take away the hedge in the front, or that there were some piers?
We refined it. We brought it down to where it was more the public spaces, and we raised it up, or the corners where the private spaces were. And we really worked with Mariani on that and thought that that was a better thing than versus having a solid U hedge going the length of the building.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty diagrammatic what we had in the beginning without developing a landscape plan.
I think more landscaping helps. I mean, when I look at the buildings that you
Absolutely.
did in Lake Forest, I think having the trees and the ground cover and it really makes a big difference.
I mean, if you look at Regents Row, it's all masonry, all the landscaping dominant. You know, McKinley, I think if you drive down there, the same sort of thing. You know, the landscape, the trees are now up to the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
You know, and they pretty much take it over.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that is a really, you know, we spend as I say, we will not cut the budget of the landscape.
Okay.
You know, I mean, that was one thing that we would not, people expect that, you know, and it's got to be initially when it goes in, pretty decent size,
Yeah.
you know.
And then my vote would be actually to enhance the porches. I think the porches could be a real opportunity. You know, that kind of defines Lake Bluff in my mind.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think you could even do like a 2-story porch and really make those elements of the elevation and bring them out proud of the brick facade. But that's just an opinion. I mean, I think it would be interesting to see, you know, maybe another concept of the porches. And that's it. That's all I have.
Okay, I kind of agree with really everything that was said before me, and I'm so glad it was said before me. I think the 2 areas where I think could be, hopefully maybe you could come back one more time with some more options on, would be the archway. I think everyone's kind of reacting to the arch, and I think you're like smaller, or you like very prominent with that big archway. I agree. I don't think it's maybe the place to spend the budget, especially if the budget's tight. And I just think that would be one, maybe tone down and take away some of the money there and spend it further forward.
I think it'd be interesting to look at a more stone entrance piece that goes up. You know, to basically take the stone that was in the arch and put it at the front door.
And just, yeah.
You
like-
know, I mean, you know, to me, that seems to do a lot of things that we're kind of looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
And somewhat appropriate. No, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think that's one thing, and then I wholeheartedly agree with Matt and Scott on the corners, because I really spent a lot of time walking around there, looking there, and I know in the ones on McKinley, Lake Bluff is a little different because people really do sit out there, you know, on that whole sidewalk area, and that corner, that particularly that's the west, east,
Southwest.
Southwest,
That
yeah.
one is so prominent, and I agree with both of these guys in saying that I think that is a real opportunity to do something special there and really make that, I think that the ones there, the screen, I think, is nice, and I think I agree that people would love that, but it doesn't look as sort of hefty or substantial or whatever as the rest of the building, I think. And so I definitely think if you could come back with maybe a couple different options on how to make that more amazing, like what are the actual materials of the porch now as it stands?
They would be all painted steel.
Painted steel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then with that, I think that the bracket there, I think that it looks too delicate for me, and especially when it's shown without the screen, it just seems very dainty, and I don't know if it's because of the scale of the drawing or whatever, but I think just in general, that's just a little thing. But I just definitely agree with the porch and the corners being something really,
One of the things that maybe we could explore or look at would be, you know, if you make it out of steel, it can be thin and small because steel is pretty strong.
Right.
So that's why New Orleans works, that's why all, you know.
yeah,
So the other direction is don't make it out of steel, make it out of, and we're in Lake Bluff, so we can build out of wood. So, you know, do we make it out of heavy timbers? Because that's gonna give them different brackets and different scale and different things.
Yeah.
Which I think
could be
you're
really
probably
more
accustomed to than having, you know,
residential.
because you see more residential, they don't make porches out of steel. They make them out of
And
wood. So
that might help with the
that-
people saying it doesn't transition to the houses. That
that-
might be a transition or
That's what
something, you know?
I think I would explore that. The one thing is that because they would be that way too, is, I don't know, what do you think? I've rebuilt stone balustrades and all that.
Yeah.
A bunch of times.
Yeah.
And I've done them with condos.
Yeah,
It's a nightmare. I mean, each of those porches is 40, 50 grand
Yeah.
to rebuild. And people just lose their mind when
Yeah.
they have to come up with an assessment of 40 or 50 grand to redo because the water got in. And the
Yeah.
ones in the front of Regents Row, we just redid them all because they all blew apart. Because they get water in and they fail. There's like no way you can do it.
yeah,
So I'm trying to eliminate
right.
those things.
Makes sense.
But I think if we looked at it as a heavy timber piece, you would get a scale that's different, the bracket would get different, those things. And so that might be something that, and it might tie into it a little bit better.
I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah, I think I mean, pull away my stupid stone idea. Well,
But I mean,
take that off. I strike that. But I do love the idea. I think what we're saying is it's a great opportunity, right, to take that little element and do something great,
Make it
whatever that
special and-
is.
Mike, can you show that up on the screen?
Sure. The porches, yep.
And the other thing
Yeah, the
is,
sou- the southwest
maybe that's an
porch is what
opportunity
everybody's
to
gonna
make
see.
it a little
Yeah.
more screened, because I know you're doing it with the landscaping,
Even
but
that
those are
3D
pretty
might
close
show
to
it.
that sidewalk, actually. So
Oh, yeah.
I
The-
feel like
the
people
abandoned-
sitting
That
out there
street
might
one.
feel, I mean, you do have the landscaping,
Yeah,
which
that
really
one.
helps.
yeah, I mean, when you're on that porch, you won't be able to see, when you're sitting, you'll not be able to see. But this landscaping is probably not as accurate as the other ones. But the idea is that you're pretty private off of that. We have that same sort of relationship in McKinley too, that where you have a pretty high hedgerow that screens the spaces below.
I don't know. I mean, just the idea of maybe exploring a couple different options for those corners, I think, to me, would be worth it. And I don't think the stone idea was bad either, you know?
Yeah, but I love the idea of making, even creating that darker statement,
Yeah.
is always great. So, because may kind of blend away a little bit, but still capture so I'm sure you'll find something great, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, the stone is not only initially expensive, so that we're going to trade the one arch for one porch.
but- yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
it's not, like, I think the money is well spent at the front door. And
Yeah.
kind of historically, that
Yeah.
kind of makes
Yeah.
sense to me. People put ornate things around their front door and do that, more expensive materials around and show off that. So that would,
Would it be wrong to do the two porches more blown out and the two back porches more simple? Like, or would people be like, no way, we're not doing, like, we don't want the bad porch, or, you know what I mean? Like,
I'd like to come up with a solution because there's three of them really. I mean, really, the two on the west elevation are pretty prominent.
Yeah.
So you really got three of them, then you have one. It's
Then
like,
why you
why
have
would
one
you do
bad
just
one?
one bad
Okay,
one?
yeah.
So
That's
I'd like to come up with a solution that we economically can make sense from all, and there's to be consistent. Because there is something nice about the building being
Yeah.
relatively consistent on all elevations, because you see it pretty prominently from all different sides.
Did you look at like a brick knee wall, kind of framing the porches at one time, the patios, or did that?
We really like to have the yard
Just the yard
go
extend
right
through.
out to, because those porches are at grade.
Yeah.
So all these are handicap accessible, so that
Yeah.
if you're in a wheelchair, you can roll right into
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
thing. So, yeah, it's a little different than
Right.
than a traditional residential porch, which obviously we raised up off the grade.
Yeah.
Then the only other questions I had were more like operational ones, which were, at the entry, I saw that you had like a little canopy kind of thing with the bracket. Well, maybe you're thinking of changing the entry anyway, but my question was, what was the material of that?
That would be a copper arch,
Okay.
and that with wood brackets.
And-
That's kind of what I would think, that we would kind of tie the wood brackets in that into the porch and how that would work.
Yeah.
So those two would kind of match up.
Okay, and then secondly, is that front door, is it locked, or how? I guess my question was, does there need to be a vestibule, or what happens with
So when you go
Amazon?
inside, there's actually a vestibule to get into the elevator beyond that. So the mailman, more important,
Yeah, my
the
question.
Amazon person.
Where do they leave all those
they
packages?
inside the vestibule, inside the building.
So they can open up that door, that very first door?
Yeah, the door, typically we have that on a electronic locking system. And so after 10 o'clock at night, it locks on
Okay.
the outside. And then you have a fob on the outside that you can get into that door, but at
Okay.
night it locks. And then beyond that, when you get in there and you have the call, you can then call whoever it is, they buzz you in
Okay.
beyond that. Yeah, we don't have it where the Amazon packages are.
All right,
on
I was
the
gonna say, I was
porch.
imagining there's gonna be like this stack of Amazon packages out on the sidewalk, but that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
All
that's,
right.
it's inside.
Okay, that was that question. Oh, and then the only other one I think that I was wondering about was, up on the roof, and also there's those generators and condenser units. How, are those loud, or how are the neighbors gonna feel about that? Is it within,
The heat pump system, I mean, basically it's a compressor that runs outside, which now is really quiet.
okay,
And the backup generators are now insulated and everything, so they're, it's really more of an issue with the people when you're outside on the deck than it would be.
for the neighbors?
Yeah, the other thing is there's a solid parapet wall around that which hides it and also bounces the sound off of it.
Okay.
So we really haven't.
It's not
had
an
it.
issue, the people
Your
behind?
neighbor, your neighbor's condenser is way closer to you than this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is that the same thing for the two that were?
They sit on the street, yeah.
Same thing?
And those are emergency backup generators, so they're only gonna run, Tuesday for 10 minutes, and then when the power's out.
Okay, all right, so nobody's gonna complain about that?
Yeah, again, they're next to, not residential, the commercial space across the street.
And then the only other thing I was gonna say, I was wondering about the sills that Matt talked about. Okay, I think that was where all my Post-its, except for, the other thing was, I noticed on your, which again, I think, goes back to the corner, which was, I noticed on your lighting that the corner is very lit, which is another reason to make it kind of spectacular, I think.
I thought the coach lights on that faced
Yeah.
Scranton
Yeah.
could be more decorative
Yeah.
and not be, and so that's kind of,
Yeah.
why that is, because there aren't any residents
Yeah, yeah.
around that area.
No, I
So it
think it's
allows it
nice.
to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that last time, which I thought worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
With the ones being in the back, being those ones, you know what, you have in your packet, I don't think I put it in here. The little bells that shine down.
Yeah.
Which are shielded toward the back and be on the roof too.
Yeah.
Which is a better light shield for neighbors on that.
So like, if we're looking at the bottom corner, is that down there, is that the lighting of, that's the porch, right, that shows lit up?
But that's pretty unique. That's if those people are home and everybody turns their lights on. They aren't, those are on individual switches within the unit itself.
Okay,
I can tell you that most of the time they're not on.
okay,
Because you don't turn your porch light on
and leave it there.
and leave
Okay.
it.
Yeah, so I think those are all my comments, actually.
What is the dimension to the top of the parapet wall? Do you have that?
35, or no, I'm sorry, 30 foot 4. 4 inches
30
over
feet?
what the code says.
Okay. And what is the Bluffington's building? Come on.
It's pretty close. I mean,
You don't
it's,
know?
I don't want to say because I don't know, but it's got to be right up there. I mean, I don't know.
Pretty close, okay.
It's pretty close. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to be, they're obviously different scale and they're different pieces and they're different, built different times. They're going to be, but they are compatible.
Yeah. You're going to have 10-foot ceilings?
Yes, in most of the areas, but where our ductwork and sprinklers and transfer sanitary, we have 9 foot.
Okay,
So that's our minimum. We have 8-foot doors,
okay.
and that's really important to us. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're spending this kind of money and that,
Totally.
it's,
Yeah, it's
and I
important.
think, that's why I think people say, oh, that's silly, it's 4 inches, you could take 4 inches out. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
You want your 4 inches less inside the space, it's kind of a big deal. People say 9-foot ceilings, you have 8'8". Doesn't sound so good,
Right.
Right.
You guys done?
Well, I had one more thing, which
Well,
was.
you've had a lot of work.
She's Columboing him.
I'm sorry. One more
Next time
thing.
we let her go.
Which is, so the letter that Susan Reese wrote, I feel like, do we need to talk about that?
After I'm done,
Okay,
you want to? Yeah.
sometimes I'm over enthusiastic. All right, I think I am now
Okay,
finished.
all right, it's my turn, so then. Let me go back in time a little bit. First of all, we keep thinking of this, or you keep saying this is a transition piece. It's really not. The next piece is the transition piece. This is 110 feet or 115 feet, or whatever that dimension is, till you get to Evanston. And so whatever happens there is more of a transition than this is. And when Peter was here the first time, the only time, you described this as more of a background building and not a statement building.
Absolutely.
And it's a little more statement now because of what we asked you to do when you were here. But those are just kind of general comments. So there's a lot of talk about the arch in the drive, and yeah, that's a different geometry than any place else. And so, everybody's got some issues with it, and I'm looking at the drawing, and you've got the little roof thing going on all 4 sides. And maybe you do that, repeat that shape down there, just a thought, and just do it out of brick. But then the bigger question is,
I'm sorry, can you show that and Bob, could you explain that?
yeah, go back to that one, Mike.
Which one are we going back to?
Just the garage elevation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you don't have it on all 4 sides.
No, we have it on the
Okay,
2.
The shape on the very top parapet.
Right, in the
where it
parapet.
just raises up, and that's kind of an echo of one of the buildings. I think
Right,
it's-
yeah.
If you pick that shape up, and just kind of did it again instead of the arch, only do it with brick Rolex and whatever, and get rid of the stone like everybody's talked about. My other question, though, relating to that, is it necessary to have a man door there at all?
For egress out of the basement, we need two ways out. And so if we don't do it there,
Hey, you're right.
and, you know, we looked at doing, having an area well out the back and how you come out, and then you're coming out in the middle of the yards, and then you've got a thing, and then you got a snow plow and all that.
Okay,
The other is,
that's enough, you're right.
Okay,
You're
yeah.
right. Yep. Okay.
the one thing I would look at too is, I don't know if I'd lose the arch shape. I think if it just wasn't stone.
Yeah.
You know, if it was just brick detail on the road, I mean, that'd be kind of a cool detail.
Just not this stone.
Just not the stone, because the stone makes it
might as
loud.
well be neon
And,
with the stone.
and that idea of the, I mean, we can't slip it in between the two pilasters if it were to get narrow, like Art was talking about, and we could get it within those two pilasters, and then it would integrate better. It's just like it didn't fit.
Right.
And it didn't fit. But we're responding to a board of people telling us what to do. You know, and so I think, you know, we have to look at it again. But that's kind of like, I'm not sure that, and we definitely would look at having it like a pediment underneath, but I'm not sure how that'd work. It'd be like an inverse pediment, and that might be kind of peculiar. But, you know, the idea of having the arch span, historically it makes sense. It's not, you know, they did it, it would be, it's working, you know, it's doing something. So that's kind of where I was going with that. But we'll study that and look at it and see what makes sense. If we can meet next week.
One last quick question, if I could, Bob, if you're finished, I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. Well, okay, no, because what I want to go back and say is that I think that the brick detailing that you've done, which we asked you to do, is very important. And I'm remembering, I know you have been to Cranbrook.
Yeah.
And you walk by Elio Serrano's, and I think it's the common building of the dining hall. And he's playing with brick. And he's got to be giggling when he's doing it, because he goes from miniature brick to big brick to different patterns. And you don't notice it, even though you're 6 feet away from it, until you do notice it. And you think, holy cow, this is a genius piece of masonry. And not that I'm saying, you know, that herringbone is a genius piece of masonry, but it's something that you maybe don't notice as you go by it. You may not see it from the library, but eventually you're going to see it and you're going to say, that really breaks this down. And it's a big building, but it's not that big. You know, there's still 115 feet or whatever it is before you get to Evanston. So I'm not really concerned about the sort of the mass of it really at all.
Well, the one thing I think is kind of, you know, again, a bunch of comments like it's like our old school. Well, yeah, it is, because they were 1920s buildings that were built basically the same style and the same idea that we were doing. So Gorton Center, you know, Gorton is sort of the school, right? So, you know, I do think it fits in. I mean, if this was, you know, if this building were here like what was the crippled home that was, or what was the house, the big masonry structure that was down the street?
Well, there was about 5 of them, 5 big buildings and the children's home.
The children's home.
Right.
If that was still standing, we make condos out of it.
They should have.
Yeah, I mean, they should have not torn it down. I mean, you know, Barrett College,
Yeah.
we'll make great condos. We had a scheme to make great condos out of it. So, I mean, I don't know that that's such a bad thing. You know, because if you go and look at what the new multifamily building is today and what it looks like in most United States, across the United States, and, you know, I just drove from here to Florida, so you get to see a lot of them. They pretty much all look the same. They're all kind of the latest style of siding material that is the windscreen of what today is. That's not what we want here.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not disappointed in this at all. I think you've made strides with what we asked you to do, and I think that improves it, with the exception of the archway thing. And the rest of the details, you know, I think will find themselves, you know, I like the idea of enhancing the porches. I'm not sure how you do that with timber. You know, you don't want to mix up too much materials there, but I'm not unhappy with this at all. But the last thing I want to mention, and this is how we do this, I don't know, but the next piece of property is going to be developed at some point. And we don't know who's going to do it or what they're going to do. You know, we've seen a proposal. But my suggestion would be if you could kind of leave your east side landscaping somewhat in limbo until we know what's going to happen if we find out, I mean, it's got to be a drop dead point sometime, what's going to happen with the next piece of property. Because that is where the transition, in my mind, is made. It's not necessarily made as much with the buildings as it is with the space in between. And there's not that much space in between, maybe 25 feet.
Yeah, if that.
And that means you and whoever maybe getting your heads together at some point in time and say, how do we make these two things work instead of a row of trees here and, you know, that's going to be like a wall, and then we do something else? Is that, if anybody understands what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that idea, and, you know, we would work with however it comes. In the short term, we need to have something so you're not looking at a couple of Range Rovers in a parking lot. So we need to do something now, but it's not that extensive.
I'm just talking about the east side.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Oh, right now, there's nothing. You're right.
I'm just saying,
Can't have-
we got to finish it with something. It's not a lot of money to do that, you know, what we have in there. But I do think the incorporation or coordination of what that is between those two properties makes sense. I'm 100% that the next property is that. That's what I was talking about is, you know, that's this sort of going from single-family residence to multifamily residence with a multifamily residence type or single-family residence massing. And that's really what they're stirring around right now. Whether that comes to fruition or not, who knows?
But something's going to
Something's going to go there, for sure.
think.
And I think the best thing is, it's not this.
Right.
You know, I mean, before we came with a scheme where this was the whole block, it's too much. You know, it needs to be in this transition in this middle of this block. You know, it really makes a lot more sense the way it got broken up.
So let me kind of wrap up what we want to do here. You know, you've got a lot of different suggestions, some of which you may or may not want to entertain. And do we want to see something again? You've got to keep moving forward.
Do we want to hear comments from the public? Should I ask the
Oh, do
people
we
on the
have
Zoom?
public
if
comments
they-
now? Yeah.
Well, let me just ask anybody on the,
Never mind, forget it. It was a
yeah.
stupid question, so.
anybody on the Zoom, if you wanted to
Oh, sure.
comment or ask anything, please press the button to raise your hand. Okay, well, I don't see them raising their hand on the Zoom, so I don't see any indication they want to talk.
Okay. Art, you said that you had a question?
No, I'm finished.
Okay. Well, I didn't get into any detail with my comments because I think we don't want to design this thing. Right. So that's, I'm kind of done, said Mike. Oh, I know. The one thing, yeah, your dark bronze is black to me. I think it's still black, Peter.
But, you know, the issue is trying to get everything else to match to it is the issue. You know, so we get this like little off-color window, and then we have all these other, you know, other metal flashings that need to match to it, and the siding, you know, so it gets tough, you know. And as I say, originally we looked at having the windows all white.
No,
I don't think that's the right solution. So I think we'll probably end up with black because it's pretty much black, other than the name of the thing. It's like, I don't know what they call
couldn't
it.
you go one step lighter than that?
I'm nervous about that again, just because of, you know, well, let's wait to see what I was more worried about the railings and how that worked with the black metal railings and all that and how that is. But if it turns to wood, maybe then we think about that, you know?
Would they look like wood? You talk about natural wood or painted wood? Because
Painted, or, stained solid stain. I don't know, I mean, that's just kind of what I'm thinking, that could be a good transition to do that. I mean, because I don't want to put columns, like, fiberglass columns on this thing or something like that. It just doesn't seem right to me,
it's not.
especially if we're going to screen them. Just makes it all complicated, going around and make panels and all that.
Did you have any comments? No? Okay.
Bob, to answer your question, I would like to see us not slow them down, but at the same time, I'd like to see it again. So I wonder about the option of recommending that the village approve the project, but that we see it one more time to see how these details work out.
Sure. I mean, I'm sort of at the mercy of you guys, whatever you think, but I appreciate you understanding the time frame that we're, I don't know how that can be done. Yeah, I mean, I'm all about making the project better. I'm all about looking at it, and, there's lots of different ways to do stuff. I get it. And we'll try things until we build it, and then we like to try to keep it the same of what we build. Although we tear stuff apart even after we build it.
So what do we need to do? We don't need to do anything then tonight.
No, you would need to make a motion saying that to recommend approval with the details to return to the ABR
Okay.
for final
So
approval of the
somebody needs to do
details.
that then.
Yeah.
So that, let me just make sure I understand just before we do all this. So we would go then to city council,
Right.
and do they ever have any hesitation about things that aren't approved like this? Is this something unique, or do it all the time? Okay, then I'm good.
I will say, in my 48 years of doing this up here, or whatever it's been, we've never been rejected, ever. Oh, yes, we were once, on a sign. Because somebody pulled the wool over our eyes.
Oh,
But
you
you're
mean
presenting-
rejected from city council?
He's
That-
presenting this though, right?
Yeah.
He's
right.
presenting this.
Right.
So,
Oh, that's a
It's always village board.
village board side.
So that has been happening on multiple projects. I'm thinking of multiple Rio projects, like you guys are gonna see whatever the LBYC finally comes up with regards to fence materials and final colors. I mean, you guys do that very frequently. The board has approved that multiple times in the past. I think it would be helpful for the board to understand where you're at least with greater level of specificity about what you want to see specifically. Sounds like, the archway, porch enhancement, treatment, and entry, whatever entry.
Entrance detail. I mean,
And I think that's
pretty
it.
much it, right?
Other than, I think, flexibility to the first comment about access to
That would be good.
have the flexibility to install a third sidewalk on the northwest corner unit. That's what I heard and made note of.
And I would encourage enhancement of landscaping. I think,
Yeah.
it sounds like you're in agreement with that.
I'm not sure how, we haven't done this in Lake Bluff, and the ones that we do in Lake Forest, we always add more landscaping in when we do the projects. It's never less, and it's sort of art form as we feel it, then, we need something more. So I think the idea is that the individual buyers of the corners will enhance their landscaping with inside that space. They kind of have the ability to do that. Most people do. So they spend more money and get things with inside their space to do that, yeah. And I think we could go back, though, and look at that front entrance landscape a little bit better. I think it's a little peculiar where they have located the ornamental trees. Don't quite work yet. So, I mean, there's little stuff like that. Like, I don't know how, do people come out with tape measures and measure where we have the trees on our plan and put them, typically not. We put them where we think we want it to be, even though.
Yeah, are the ornamentals right in front of the door and window in front of, on either side?
They aren't on the landscape plan, if you look at it. We put it in our rendering that way because that's where it should be.
Yeah.
As I say, there's like little things that just tweak around a little bit.
Okay, so we need that motion, unless anybody's got other comments.
Well, you pretty well said the motion, so moved.
Okay. Okay, Neil made the motion.
Neil made a motion. I second Neil's ad hoc motion on,
You made all the motions today.
Yeah, I'm in a motion mode.
Okay, so, roll call.
Okay. Member Wicks,
Aye.
Member Stradiff,
Aye.
Member Fairwex.
aye.
Member Dahlman,
Aye.
Member Cottrell,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we're
Thanks
very
for everybody's
excited. No,
comments. I appreciate it.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great.
Okay, now, if we want to tackle the letter,
Yeah, okay.
I was a little bit confused about exactly what it was talking about. I don't know if you had a conversation with,
No, I didn't. I didn't really, I didn't talk to him except for the
back and
email.
forth
Yeah,
emails.
right,
I
right,
thought that was pretty well done,
yep.
both us and him.
So,
Do we know what the, rendering, what did she say, hang on a minute,
She's talking about a survey.
yeah, was there?
You know, my only thought was that maybe she was talking about the different comp plan discussions or something like that. And we've also talked about missing middle housing, not for this specific site, but for other areas around downtown. You know, there's definitely been some communications about missing middle or comp plans or something like that, that maybe that is what she's talking about.
I think I remember, when they had some of those, what was it, like no 3-on-3, when they were doing all those proposals, I remember some of the presentations talking about the demographic that would move into these things. And maybe it was somebody who's retiring that wants to stay in.
Yeah, that was the goal.
Yeah.
And never could make the numbers work, evidently.
Yeah, but I don't know if
I
it
mean,
was a
that board
formal thing.
downstairs about the missing middle,
Yeah. And what you do at Block 3, like
missing
trying,
middle was, it really had nothing to do with affordable housing, or it was the kind of housing, I guess, that we don't have much of anymore.
Right.
yeah,
What there was is being torn down, so.
right,
Right,
yeah.
right.
You know, it's Armor Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But I thought, one thought was, could be Block 3 if you made the numbers work, but you know, like making those $300,000 condos, which you just can't.
Yeah.
It's just not tall enough to do that. I think that was the discussion at one point, like,
At one point.
yeah. And then everybody said there's just no way.
Is there such a thing as a $300,000 condo?
Come to Kankakee. Kankakee, we have tons of them.
if it's in a 40-year-old building, yeah,
But there's not many
brand new.
condos. All these new
No.
things that you're seeing are rentals.
Yeah, yeah. that's-
Right, I
For sure.
understand, I also understand that as well.
Yeah.
But soon there will be condos.
Yeah.
Well, there's one in Highland Park right across the street from my office that they're selling for 2 to 3 million. The penthouses are 5 million. They're sold out. They won't be occupied for about another 6
Is
months.
that the new contemporary one?
They're all sold.
Well, this
That's not
this
the- not
project
the
we're
David Hovey
talking
guy,
about
is it?
right now,
Optima?
No.
Is all sold.
Not part, but the Optima ones that are
Yeah.
down on Sheridan Road, Green Bay, all glass boxes,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
She says, number 3.3, the renderings in the packet are an absolute non-starter for us and are entirely different from, here's a question I have, from what was originally shown to us when this discussion started. Do we know what she means by that?
I don't. I'm not sure if she means what these people showed before they came to public meetings, or if it's what past applicants or, people have shown on
Yeah.
Block 3. I'm not sure. It could be either one.
Well, the only two things that I know of that were shown before was the last one prior to this was the Roanoke Group, which went all the way to Evanston, which was 3 stories high.
Is that the
That one went
mansard?
away
Yeah.
because of the height restriction.
Yeah.
And then the prior one to that was, there was 3 different firms that came in and made a pitch. And they were all, one of them was like remnants of an old factory that was really cool. So talk about a transition, that was, and I don't remember the other 2.
No, I think I thought she was referring to something entirely different.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think,
Regarding that missing middle thing, there was a presentation right here in this room.
Let's
Where
go
they
back
had
up.
all kinds of pictures all over the place.
right.
And they said, take these markers and put this blue thing on something that you like.
Yeah,
And I think that's what she's
I
referring to.
bet that is.
that could be too. I don't know.
Okay.
So what do we, like, I feel like this person, like, went through all the trouble to write this. I feel like, what do we do in this case? Do we have to write back to her? Or do we say we read your note and we considered it and for these, I don't know.
No, we generally don't write back afterwards. I mean, I told her I would give everyone the comments.
Yeah.
And everyone would read her comments.
Okay.
And, that's really it. We consider it,
Okay.
But I don't really understand what the comments refer to.
Yeah, that's a little.
Do you know what information you gave her that she thanks you for?
I had sent her the link to our packet for tonight's meeting.
Okay. So I wonder if it is about this.
Well,
Well, she says
That's-
that she doesn't like the building.
Yeah.
Based on what she sees.
Yeah.
But then she starts bringing in these other issues, which are really outside the purview of the ARB anyway.
Right, right.
building that Peter showed, it was the first thing that in black form anyway, that
Yeah.
the PCZBA saw.
Yeah.
It hasn't really altered much,
Right.
other than the detail of what it is.
Right. And I think, her comment that's probably most pertinent to what we're doing tonight is, that it should blend seamlessly with the neighborhood, and it doesn't quite. I mean, it's similar to comments we've been discussing all evening,
Yeah.
really. That's what we've been discussing.
If you think about.
Depends if you walk west or you walk east.
Yeah.
What, I'm sorry, what was that again?
Depends if you walk west or you walk east.
Right,
Yeah, or if you're walking on the north side of the street or the south side
Yeah,
of the street.
right.
The
Oh, that
north
is
side
true.
of the street
Right.
is nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
The
But
south side of the
equally,
street is where all the character is.
Bob, that could stay that way for another 40 years.
I know.
So, I mean, you kind of have to kind of look at things in context
Yeah.
of where they are now. And so I look along the west and I see, like, in my mind, I see this and then this.
Yeah.
And then back down again. And, to me, and you talk about transitions and stuff, and I think of a transition as a slope.
Yeah.
Okay, not a cliff.
But there
You know,
have been multiple.
Both are transitions, no
There have actually
question.
been multiple proposals about the building across the street, where the little one-story things are.
Right.
So,
And all those things may happen.
yeah.
And you really don't know what they're gonna
You
look
don't
like
know.
either.
You don't know.
So are we going to adjourn the meeting? We're live, aren't we?
We can do that. Yeah,
Neil.
somebody
Neil
has
has
to
a
make a
date.
motion.
I move to adjourn the
Move we
meeting per
adjourn.
Neil's command.
Yeah.
Aye. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, sure. Okay,
Right.
meeting's adjourned.
You want all the stuff?
I'm gonna keep mine.
If you want.
I'm gonna ask you a question, Mike. You gave me a copy of the public building plan, I think, a while back.
That was fun.